Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to have another amazing guest on our podcast. This is a friend and a fellow colleague, Teri Cochrane. Thanks, Teri. Thanks for taking the time to come talk to us today about your specialty.
Oh, thank you. It's always wonderful to see and be with you.
Thanks. So you have a very interesting background. Now you are, very experienced. You're an integrative practitioner, a nutritional thought leader. You're definitely leading the industry. You're changing some things in the industry. You're certified in healing touch, cranial sacral therapy, meditation, herbology, all these amazing things. But you weren't always in this field. So tell us a little bit about what drew you to this field of healing and wellness.
I'd be happy to. And if you would have asked me 20 years ago where I would be 20 years from then, the last thing I would have thought of that I would be in the field of healthcare and breaking some major healthcare rules. Yes, I had a corporate career. I was a real estate executive. I worked for Freddie Mac and I ran one of their departments in their multifamily division. I was a risk manager for their multifamily assets. I had been a bankruptcy specialist with a large insurance company in their portfolio real estate group. But when I had my first child, who was born 6 weeks premature, by the age of 3, he was really struggling with his health. He had massive bleeding eczema. He had life-threatening asthma. His bone density was that of a 19-month-old. It was really very sad. At our 3-year well check, the doctor told me to prepare for brain seizures and that he would not grow past 5'4". And when you get that kind of news, he was my first. So as a new mom, you really it takes your breath away. And I at first thought, well, we're going to work with this. We're going to make do with what we've been told. But there was some lingering thought in my heart, really saying, what if it doesn't have to be this way? What if there's another way for my son? And for the next 2 years, I really tried all conventional modalities, and we took him to, of course, pediatricians and endocrinologists and allergists, and he was only getting worse. And the treatment of choice was steroids and bronchial dilators and antibiotics and more steroids. And this little body, this 3-year-old little body that was less than 60 pounds, was being given 60 milligrams of prednisone on an ongoing basis. And I had no idea how devastating prednisone can be, but much, much more to a body that's just starting its cellular, reproduction in a big way. And their little clearing systems are so immature. And so by the age of 5, I said I was done. And then I started becoming his own little body detective. And I became a risk manager for his health. And research upon research, before the age of the internet, I'd go to libraries, I'd talk to parents, I'd scan children in his preschool saying, is their health profile? And there was one child in particular that I had seen over the course of the year where he was really ill. And by the end of the year, he'd gotten much better and was very robust. And so I asked the mother what she had done, and she had taken him to an integrative medical doctor, Dr. Patricia Sebastian Armstrong, who is now retired, but she later became my mentor. I was so grateful that she was holding my hand through my journey of understanding. But, we found out that he had allergies to peanuts and corn and citrus and gluten, and then his endocrine system was really disrupted, and his poor little adrenals were just all but shut down because the steroids are so destructive to the adrenals.
Wow, what an amazing story. And like most of us who are doing this work, we typically have a story that really propels us to put us on a mission, and we just want to, share this news with the world because we know how beneficial it can be. So, we've had conversations at conferences, and you definitely have an out of the box approach when it comes to nutrition. And you've written an amazing book, which I love. It's the Wildatarian Diet, Living as Nature Intended. And what I love about the book is that it's common sense. It just really resonated with me. And so tell us a little bit about your approach, your dietary approach with your clients, because you see really tough cases. I mean, that's kind of your specialty, right? You see, people that are frustrated and have tried everything, and then they come to you, and from, biochemical, nutritional, emotional aspect, you really work well with them. So if you hear thunder, it's because there's a big thunderstorm.
Oh, we had that yesterday.
Yeah, we get them every afternoon here in Naples. So, okay, so tell us a little bit about your nutritional approach, the Wildatarian approach.
Absolutely. Well, first, thank you for the very generous feedback on the book. It's really a love letter, I say, to all those individuals out there that will deal with your health issues, and it's just going to get worse. And so the Wildatarian approach, we say it's a personalized approach to healthcare just for you, but it's also the diet for everyone. And the reason being is that I've developed 4 major archetypes of Wildatarian. So I invented the word. And the word Wildatarian, we've defined it as eating sustainably grown wild game and wild fish and shellfish, low mycotoxin grains and legumes. That means low fungus, really, healthy sugar fruits, and low foods that could create the biofilm. And those are certain fats that can be anything but healthy for you. And then particularly the sulfur. So the Wildatarian tenets they stem from what I have coined to be the big 3 of protein, fat, and sulfur malabsorption. And so some of these very healthy foods, for example, like when you're eating chicken and broccoli, that could be really destructive for you. And so what I found was that proteins in our domesticated animal products are hurting us. And the reason being, and this is out of studies out of Cambridge in Japan, they tell us that the crowding of these animals, and particularly the studies have directly been done with chicken and beef, and chicken being the biggest offender. I call it the bird that we dirtied in the frickin' chicken, because it carries the highest load of these truncated proteins by the name of amyloids. Now, people may have heard of amyloids in the world of Alzheimer's, these beta amyloids in our brain. But now, again, the studies out of Cambridge and Japan show us that these amyloids are responsible for contributing to 50 major conditions in our country, including diabetes, kidney disease, cancer, infertility, autoimmunity, ALS, Parkinson's, and of course, Alzheimer's. And so what we found was through the study, and also through the body of clinical outcomes that I have in my practice, is that if we feed the body lower amyloid-rich foods, that being of wild game, we find that they're lower in amyloid. So for example, if you're eating bison or buffalo instead of beef, I call bison/buffalo. They're different animals, but very close from a species perspective. The skinny cow. It's 50% the cholesterol. It's got more essential fatty acids than salmon, and it has proteins that we can actually break down into amino acids and then recombine for the multiple bodily functions that are necessary, which draw their use from the amino acids recombined as we need them. So the Wildatarian project I adapted with low protein or wild protein and protein that your body can assimilate. And then the big discovery was sulfur. And I thought, well, goodness, how can sulfur be hurting us? Well, unfortunately, Roundup is a super big problem as it relates to sulfur. And so a lot of America has been told, eat your broccoli high in sulfur, eat your kale, have some eggs, the yolks are great. Well, maybe, and especially if you have genetic predispositions that make you less efficient in breaking down sulfur. The undergirding of the Wildatarian diet is really rooted in your genetic makeup. And although we don't ask you to take a genetic test, I've created a quiz wherein the body talks to you, and it will give you, it's not a direct corollary that you specifically have the MTHFR gene, which is one that's so critical in multiple functions for protein absorption, for fat assimilation, for carrying our neurotransmitters across the blood-brain barrier. But the body really talks to us. And it gives us signs. And so we call it body talk. And taking the quiz based on how your body is talking to you will tell you if you have a sulfur issue. One of the biggest things is if you smell asparagus coming out the door in your toilet, that's a big sulfur issue. If you have a sulfa allergy for antibiotics, clearly that's a sulfur processing issue. If you have a history of arthritis in your family, in particular rheumatoid arthritis, 73% of individuals with rheumatoid arthritis have impaired sulfur processing. History of Crohn's or ulcerative colitis linked to sulfur. So sulfur's become a big bad hombre, as I call it, because of the glyphosate, which is found in the Roundup. And then the third one is fat. And fats are so important for us. They're important for our brain. We need it as women to keep our skin supple, as hormones. But with there you go, they agree. We know that our stress response of epinephrine and cortisol, the big stress hormones, I call them the cupcakes because they're a fat and a sugar, are really disrupting our body's ability to process fats. And in women, that's a big deal, especially back to the MTHFR, because you could be recycling estrogen and that can drive cancer. And so using these tenets and figuring out which type of Wildatarian you are has really helped thousands and thousands of people that I see every year. Now, of course, they come to me with very serious health conditions, and we develop a supplemental plan as well as a needing plan. But I will tell you, just recently, this is a wonderful story of hope, and nothing is impossible. I had a gentleman who had come to see me, and he was literally self-combusting inside out. His liver enzymes were crazy. His kidney function was terrible. He had taken Plaquenil and had a significant reaction because he had rheumatoid arthritis. And the 80 milligrams of prednisone was not touching it. He was desperate. He was so red. He was fire engine red, and it was literally had like massive big canker sores and sores all over his body. He was so delicate, I could only really counsel him with food. And we found that sulfur was the big culprit. He said, Teri, I went to 4 doctors and 5 pharmacists and specialists. Nobody figured it out. We graduated him in 2 visits. He's doing phenomenally well. This is a really cool, the power of food. His reactive CRP went from 30 to 1.3 in less than a month.
30
to 1.3. It's crazy.
Wow.
And that's why I call food the alpha and the omega. And he was eating a sulfur-rich diet.
So explain to people what sulfur-rich diet means. What kind of foods are those?
Yes. So typically anything that's in the brassica family, these healthy foods that you've been told, put it on your kitchen or on your kitchen table and on your plate: broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, arugula, kale, garlic, especially raw, onion, especially raw, egg yolks. So watercress, those with a bite to it, have a sulfur compound. They're wonderful. They're wonderful for liver detoxification. They're even wonderful for estrogen metabolism. However, I say buyer beware. If you have that sulfur sensitivity, eating a lot of crucifers can actually be a poison or near poison in your body rather than a liver detoxifier. And clearly in this gentleman, whose name is Brian, in his case, it became a life-threatening poison to him through the Plaquenil.
So is there a gene associated with this sulfur?
Yes. So we look at 3 basic genes. The CBS gene, which is this, I call it the central broadcasting station. It's broadcasting, help, help, don't feed me sulfur. The second one is the SUOX gene. And going back to the CBS gene, the CBS gene has a lot to do with our neurotransmitters, our body's ability to use our dopamine, use our serotonin, use our epinephrine. And also we now know we have more nerve endings in our gut than we do in our brain. And so that CBS gene can really be linked to your ulcerative colitis and your irritable bowel and potentially Crohn's and certainly ankylospondylosis, any kind of neurological issues, very, very linked to that CBS gene. The SUOX gene has more to do with just an arthritic situation. And then the third gene that is part of the methylation, but I also liken it to the sulfation pathway, is the BH4 gene. And that's really necessary for turning cysteine homocysteine is cysteine, and homocysteine is an inflammatory amino acid, which has been really linked to heart disease, especially in men. And what we found is part of the Wildatarian approach too is that these viruses and bacteria are having a great awakening because of the amyloids and because of these mycotoxins, which are fungi, which now we know feed the biofilm, which is that little, I call it the fortress around the pathogens, that make it indestructible. And you can't get through into that bacteria or virus until you eat through that biofilm. That biofilm is fed by these mycotoxins. And mycotoxins, one of the biggest mycotoxins that we eat every day, corn. So almost 88% of corn is genetically modified, and that genetic modification, they have fungal metabolites, and they're feeding the biofilm. And Michael Pollan says, I love Michael Pollan. He's written amazing. The Omnivore's Dilemma. I wept when I read it in 2006. It just spoke to me. Is that we're a bunch of walking corn sticks, because the average American consumes multiple pounds of corn a year and hidden in many ways. I take one step further. I say we're a bunch of walking mold sticks, because the corn is creating the mycotoxins, which are fungal metabolites, and you know this. Mold feeds cancer.
Yeah, for sure. So I know the question's going to come up. Well, what if I eat Pasture raised? Woo!
No, they say no. That was close. Oh goodness. So no, it's okay.
So Pasture raised on a farm, beef or chicken. Are the amyloids still as plentiful in those meats?
It's definitely better. And I haven't done the specific clinical research. I just know that through my outcomes in my practice, we've had people even go back to pasture after they've gone to wild, and it's still not good enough. And the way that I'm thinking is because now we know that these issues are multi-generational. And if that pasture-fed cow multiple generations ago had a mother who was on a feedlot, it's still being passed genetically through that. Whereas wild, they're wild, and they've not had that.
And so buffalo and bison, so they're being raised agriculturally now. So those are okay as far as amyloids.
This is a cautionary tale. What we have found is so far so good. But if we start creating feedlots for the wild animals, we're not going to have wild animals anymore, because inherently the cows weren't a problem, way back when. Neither was the chicken. It's very high in L-carnitine, which is a fat that's so important for liver function. But I'm not fat, excuse me, amino acid that's so important for liver function. But if we keep, my whole philosophy of living as nature intended is that voting with our food dollars and saying, I'm only going to buy sustainably raised animals, sustainably fed chickens for their eggs. We have to turn the ship. It's really scary. And I see I just saw a little autistic boy right before our airing today, and clearly a heavy mycotoxin load, heavy latex, heavy sulfur. Sulfur was big in his CBS gene, which really relates to the executive functioning of dopamine. You need dopamine for executive functioning. We've gotten him to start talking. It's very, very exciting. But we've got a lot of work to do in this area.
Yeah, for sure. So tell us a little bit more about, so a person wants to change over to a Wildatarian diet. What's the easiest process to do this? Like, where do people buy wild meat? And, we've had conflicting reports as far as, well, I shouldn't eat grains because grains have all the toxins, and, which grains are okay and which grains are not. So walk us through a typical Wildatarian diet for the day, let's say.
That's a great question. So I'll take you through my diet. I'm a WS Wildatarian. I'm a low sulfur Wildatarian. Sulfur kicks my butt. Also low oxalate, that can be the healthy foods of spinach and so forth. And when you take the quiz, you'll see that if you need to be low oxalate, it'll tell you how to do that as well. So almonds and black beans and spinach are poisons to me, as are cabbage and kale. I did a smoothie with kale and arugula one morning, and I literally had to pull off the road because I couldn't think. it really hit my CBS gene and it affected my cognitive function. It was scary. I thought I was having a healthy smoothie, and I had bought the wrong greens. And I just, I'm half asleep and I put it in my smoothie, and then I go and I'm like, this tastes a little weird. And then, I'm driving to work and I had cold throat. That significant.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, I think the first thing anyone should do is really go to our website at tericochrane.com and take our quiz, find out what type of Wildatarian you are. And then our book is a really great, consumer friendly. I just asked one of my clients today, or actually they told me, they said, we really loved your book. It was very consumable. Even though I'm not a healthcare practitioner, you wrote it in such a way that's very understandable. And it helps you, it takes you through the journey of becoming a Wildatarian, what it means to be a Wildatarian. And part of it is, it's not just about the food, it's about our thinking. It's about shifting from, oh my gosh, I can't eat this healthy food and I'm not, something's really wrong with me because I can't eat this healthy food, to, no, I am shifting to a Wildatarian diet that it's based in abundance and sustainability, and substituting for something that my body will love. And, back to Brian, the gentleman that, where the Plaquenil gave him a life-threatening situation, he's an engineer. He's like, what the heck is Wildatarian, Teri? And, but it literally shifted the trajectory of his life. And he is now like, I'm grilling bison, I'm doing duck bacon, this is incredible. I won't get near garlic. I had garlic accidentally on something and I felt crappy for 2 days. My gut told me immediately. So, it's really about substituting. So for example, this morning, I had an incredible Sammy's Millet Flax Bagel, which by the way, carries 6 to 9 grams of protein. No bagel does that. It's not approved for celiac because it's got a little bit more than 28 parts per million threshold for celiac, but it's definitely gluten-free for those that are gluten sensitive.
What's the name of it?
Sammy's Bakery, which is in Tampa, actually. That's where they originate, millet and flax. I toasted that with avocado and an heirloom tomato with my beautiful sea salt and olive oil. I was so happy.
Yeah.
I was incredibly happy. And then for lunch today, I had the skipjack tuna with some wonderful red bib lettuce and avocado again and cucumber. And then tonight I'm having grilled octopus. And Costco carries octopus. And I'm going to have, so I usually eat the same foods. Since I have these heirloom tomatoes, I'm doing an heirloom tomato and cucumber salad. And then I'm going to do that with some grilled asparagus. And the asparagus, I call it the tattletale. It's not the bad boy. It just tells on the sulfur kids. So I can tell if my sulfur processing isn't working very well because I smell asparagus coming out the other side. And I'm working with a gentleman who is a cancer survivor of colorectal cancer. And he had a big sulfur processing issue. And he's shared with me recently, he's like, I don't smell asparagus anymore. And I'm like, yay, that means that your body's better able to process sulfur. And he had some inflamed lymph nodes. He says, I feel my lymph nodes are already starting to come down in just 10 days of this diet. It's incredible.
Excellent. So other than diet, what sort of things do you coach or encourage your clients to look at, and how do you help them?
Absolutely. Well, mindset is everything. And I say the thought creates the thing, and first in thought and then in form. And the beautiful work of Candace Pert that said, the way that we think about life will actually have a biological, she was the biochemist, a biological effect on our cell membrane. And the wonderful work of one of my heroes, Dr. Joe Dispenza, who's a neuroscientist, who has proven that thoughts will affect our neuronal programming in real time. And if we're pushing epinephrine, that stress response, we now know, and we have the citation in my book, that will increase the pathogenicity, the viruses, yeah, he agrees, the pathogenicities of the viruses and the bacteria, which can feed cancer. It just makes them aggregate, and then it leaks our gut, it lowers our choline stores. And for women, choline, especially women with a potential breast cancer, is critical because it's so important in the methylation pathway and in the recycling of estrogen and the metabolism of estrogen. So if we're stressed, we're going to lower those choline stores. And acetylcholine is important for the brain. So the thought creates the thing. And I really tell my clients a gratitude journal of what I want you to think 5 happy thoughts a day, and pattern interrupt. If you're having a thought that makes you feel constrictive in your body, pattern interrupt, shake it off, shake your booty, I say, because shaking actually moves energy through our body, and then redirect that thought to something that is gratitude oriented. Or at a minimum, if you can't get to the gratitude, I tell them physically go like this, because energy is real. Unpack the energy, look at it, whatever it is, call the thing whatever it is, fear, doubt, worry, anxiety. I'm like, okay, I got you here. I'm going to put you over here, and I'm going to suspend any kind of energetic currency, meaning a thought, for at least an hour, hopefully a day, maybe 3 days, and then I'll take a look at it again. And in that time, what good might there be from this thing that is scaring me, that is making me doubt, that is making me think that I'm less than? Where is the good in this? And if we can find the good in everything, the mind shifts. And I had the most significant experience with one of my clients today. Huge man. I call him the $1 billion man. He's getting ready to sell his company for just amazing things that he's done with his life. There's a huge stress response related to this unpacking and his life transition through the sale. And because I do applied kinesiology, when I had him think about what's going to happen in the next several months, he literally failed everything, because his thought had a direct neuronal programming in his energetic field. And then I had him think about his daughters and his lovely wife, and how much love is in their family, and it immediately shifted his patterning. And that was I said, you're going to be my case study, and we're going to study you, because that's the power of thought.
That is so amazing. And that's one of the things that I always talk about. Essential number 4 is to heal the emotional wounds. And big fan of Dr. Dispenza and Candace Pert. Your mind becomes your body.
Absolutely.
An expression of that. So it's such an important piece, and it's so great that you incorporate that in your practice as well. So Teri, you have a free gift for our listeners. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, we're giving you some recipes today. And my Wildatarian approach is you can make or prepare a meal in less than 15 minutes. I love you, Julia Childs, but I just don't have that time in my life. And we can really be foodies and really prepare wildly delicious and nutritious for you foods with these recipes. And what's cool about the Wildatarian recipes is each recipe is adapted for your Wildatarian type. So we've created a key that says, well, okay, if you're a WS Wildatarian, being sulfur, you're going to omit the garlic in the recipe, or substitute a green pepper instead. And so what we do is, again, shifting that mindset from deprivation to substitution and abundance. And again, the thought creating the thing is that if we can shift our mindset around, I'm going to be on a diet, because I've actually changed the definition of diet from it's going to be temporary and deprivation based to everything we consume in life, which is our thoughts, our environment, who we hang out with, and knowing that it's really a sustainable thing. That diet is sustainable. The word diet is not a dirty word. And that's why I actually named it the Wildatarian Diet. I actually initially wasn't going to name it diet, but I'm like, no. We have to shift the thinking, because again, the thought creates the thing. We've got to change our mind around diet. And these recipes will give you ample latitude in being able to prepare them, still being extremely delicious, but for your type.
Awesome. And where can they take this quiz?
Yes. So you can take it on my website. It's www.teri, Teri Cochrane with an E, COCHRANE.com. And, the website's really cool, but we're upgrading the website. And in September, we're going to have amazing videos and wonderful testimonials from our clients, and actually some of our colleagues and thought leaders who've been gracious enough to share their experience with me. And my practice. So it's, we say we walk humbly in humble influence, trying to influence the thinking of broken health rules.
That's amazing. No, that's great. Love your work. Love your book. And I've personally consulted with you. Was a little overwhelmed at first because it definitely radically changes your thinking about nutrition, but it was very helpful for me. So thank you for all the work that you're doing. And I know our audience will greatly appreciate it as well.
My great pleasure. Such an honor.
Thank
Great
you.
to see you. All right, dear.